I had an interesting experience yesterday that I just wanted to share with y'all. I took a class for my concealed weapons permit with my church group. So yeah, that was interesting. And keep in mind, these were not gun people. Okay, these were just normal people. And we had a very diverse group there. We had a single mom, we had our pastor, we had a couple that was dating, we had a couple that married and retired, and then myself and Mrs. River. So this is as many men as women, and as far as the ones taking the class, I was really the only gun person. One other person there maybe, but anyway, just these were not gun people. So yeah, that was interesting. And for our class, we had to cover so much in classroom setting. We had to pass a test, and we had to go to a range and qualify. And the entire process was about 8 hours, so it's pretty extensive. And at the range, we had to fire 50 shots at a standard NRA silhouette. This is mine. Yeah, I did okay. I qualified anyway. So, and everybody qualified. But as a gun person, I was kind of nervous. I'll be honest. Again, these were not gun people, so they were not familiar with firearms. They weren't being negligent at all. They just weren't around firearms, weren't used to them, didn't, weren't comfortable operating them yet. But here they were. And that was interesting. That was, first of all, was a sign of our times. I mean, just think about that. A church group taking a class together for concealed weapons permits. I mean, just 20 years ago, I couldn't have even imagined such a thing. And that doesn't mean people didn't shoot 20 years ago. Especially you go back a few years before that, and shooting was common. Shooting sports, skeet, trap, things like that. Turkey shoots. Churches would have turkey shoots as fundraisers. I mean, this was all common. And as far as the shooting sports, in our community, we had a very large plant. It was a corporation many of you have heard of. It was here for many years. When I was young, they had a park for their employees. It was by a local lake, and just the regular, if you worked there, you could use the park. It was for their regular employees. They had a trap course and skeet range there. I mean, just think about that for a moment. Imagine Google or Apple or some other big corporation today having a park for its just normal employees, with volleyball nets and swimming areas and a place to go shoot their firearms. So yeah, different times. And again, that wasn't that many years ago, but times have definitely changed. And that's a sign of our times now, a church group taking a class for concealed weapons permits. And, this is a lot different than the shooting sports that used to be so popular. Sports that were so popular, they're Olympic events. There's a lot of shooting sports in the Olympics. You'll see very little television coverage of it, but they're there. And high schools, they had trap teams and skeet teams and rifle teams, and some still do. I was on a rifle team in high school. Again, things have changed a lot since then. And not necessarily for the better. And you didn't hear about people getting hurt then. People were familiar with firearms and knew how to use them. Well, we've gotten so far away from that so many now they're not familiar with firearms. And the people in our class, they weren't. But yet here they were. They had decided to take responsibility for their own safety and for others around them. And I'll be honest, I was proud of them. I mean, I understand a lot of people look at a firearm and they see the potential for an accident. Okay, they see the potential for them to accidentally hurt themselves or someone else, and they choose not to have a firearm in their home or around them or anything else. And I understand that, I really do. Well, the people in the class yesterday, they saw that same potential for accidents and so forth, yet there they were. They decided they were going to take responsibility for their own safety. And again, I was proud of them. And that really made me think about the nature of responsibility and what it means to accept responsibility. Right? To accept that you can make a mistake, that you might mess up here. It might hurt someone else. You might hurt yourself. Bad things can happen from this. But you recognize this is something you need to do, and you do it. And you're willing to accept the consequences, and you understand your actions can have consequences. That's responsibility. And that's, and stepping up and saying it needs to be done, I'm going to do it. Even though it's sitting in my comfort zone and I might mess up, it needs to be done, I'm going to do it. That's accepting responsibility. And so many today that's a concept they just know nothing about. So many of us have put the burden of responsibility on others, like police, government, teachers, on and on and on, that we don't even understand what it means to take responsibility anymore. And it's sad. And it seems like the ones that know the least about responsibility and take the least responsibility for anything, those are the ones that scream the loudest when somebody makes a mistake that has taken on responsibility. Well, police are human. They can make a mistake just like me or you. I mean, that's just bottom line. They do make mistakes. They're human. And when they make a mistake, you see people screaming, how horrible they are. Well, the people screaming is the ones that chose to put that burden of responsibility on the police. The ones screaming about it, those are the ones that have never accepted responsibility for anything, or very little responsibility. I couldn't help but to think about that. But it kind of made sense, though, that those people there from my church would have taken that responsibility, because that's kind of the nature of a church. All right, the founders of a church, that they got together at some point in the past. They said, we're going to build a church. They didn't ask someone else to build the church. They didn't ask the government to build the church. They said, we're going to build a church. And they put in the work and the effort, time, resources, money, and they built the church. They created something from nothing and built the church. And then they took responsibility for maintaining it. And that's what members of a church do. They take responsibility for their church. And if they don't take responsibility for it, if they don't make the decisions, and if they don't put in the time and effort, work and resources, there won't be a church. That's why the church exists. First of all, because of the founders building it, and then because of subsequent generations maintaining it and keeping it going for future generations. That's what church is all about. And I know a lot of you aren't in the church. I just really had, noticed that, seeing the church members there, that it just made sense, seeing the work they do in the church and the responsibility they take and the time they put in. It just made perfect sense suddenly to realize that these are the people that would take responsibility, that they would step up and say, okay, I might make a mistake, but it needs to be done. I'm here. That's what church is. There's no playbook for a church that says this is how you do things. And you have to figure it out as you go, and if you mess up, your church might not make it. The consequences for your decisions, that's responsibility. And watching them at the range, I'm going to be honest, it was like watching teenagers learn how to drive. I was uncomfortable. But yet there they were. And every one of them qualified. And they weren't trying to put the responsibility on the police to protect them and so forth. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that they in their mind thought they were going to do the job of police or something like that. I'm not saying that at all. Every person there respects our police and are glad we have our police. But they also recognize police can't be everywhere at once. And sometimes, you need to step up and take responsibility for yourself. And it's interesting seeing that. And like I said, it made me proud. It made me proud of my church members, my church. But not every church is like that. Churches, they're as unique and different as the individuals in them. And something else I saw a couple of weeks ago, Mrs. River and myself, we were coming back from somewhere, and we went through an intersection, busiest intersection in our town. And on each of the four corners, there were about 25 kids, and they were holding up signs that said, "Save the youth." And when cars stopped at the red lights, they would hold out buckets and ask for donations. And they were part of a church group. And I just thought how sad that was, that the things their church was teaching them, which was just the complete opposite of responsibility. Because the first thing, holding up signs, literally their signs said, "Save the youth." Their kids standing there holding them up. So basically the signs were saying, "Save us." Well, their church was teaching them that they needed to be saved, and they needed others to save them, and they needed strangers to come in and save them. That's just a poor thing to teach kids. I mean, just no responsibility there. No responsibility on the elders in the church to teach the kids how to take responsibility. They had the kids out there doing the work. And I'm all for kids learning how to do work. But not to ask others to save them, to learn how to save themselves, to earn money for themselves. And their church was teaching them basically how to get something for nothing. Hey, just stand here long enough and people will give you money. I wonder where the panhandlers could get an idea like that. They were taught the same thing at some point. How many of those kids do you think will be standing on the corner one day as adults begging for money? That's what they were taught. Anyway, I just thought that was a sad thing to teach kids. And so, yeah, all churches aren't the same, but I was proud of my church. And as I thought about this a little more, I think that says a lot about our governments too, and just the nature of responsibility. Western nations, we're all in debt. The U.S. probably has more debt by far than anybody, but we're all in debt. Well, we got people that are in debt that aren't responsible for anything, electing other people that have never been responsible for anything, and then sending them to represent us. They don't care if we're in debt. Politicians, our leaders, they're not worried about debt. Somebody else can deal with that. That's somebody else's problems. They're just worried about making money, getting rich, and reelected. That's it. They have no concept of responsibility because they've never been responsible for anything, and they still aren't responsible. Look at the debt. Responsible people do not bankrupt the country. Responsible people don't run up the debt to some amount that you don't even know if it'll ever get paid back and just pass it off on future generations. That's not what responsible people do. So yeah, we got irresponsible people electing irresponsible people. No surprise, our politicians are irresponsible people. Hey, it shows democracy is alive and well. People are, they're electing officials that's just like themselves. Yeah, that's a lot to think about their own responsibility. But again, I was proud. And something else I noticed in the class too, and this is something for you gun people to really keep in mind. The instructor, just in course of conversation, he explained to them about a 223 or 5.56 for an AR, what that cartridge actually was, which is a 22 caliber bullet with a lot of powder behind it. All right, what those people in our class, again, they weren't gun people. They had no idea what an AR shoots. They've never shot an AR. They just thought it's some super powerful cartridge from what they've heard in the media. Well, they know what a hunting cartridge is. They know what a 30-06 is, or most of them did, just from, family members hunting or something like that. They couldn't believe how much less powerful a 223 was than, say, a 30-06. Again, they didn't know anything about a 223, but they knew about a 30-06, and they knew what a 22 was. Most of them are shooting 22s for qualification. They just were astonished when they learned that a AR shoots a 22 bullet. They didn't know. And I'd had a similar conversation with a coworker years ago. He was not straight up anti-gun, but he was definitely for gun control. And he didn't think normal civilians should be able to own ARs. And he knew absolutely nothing about guns, just like most people that are anti-gun. And I know for you gun people out there, you know most of the people that are anti-gun, or at least the politicians, you know they don't know anything about a gun. Just you listen to them talk for 5 minutes and you realize they don't know what they're talking about. They have no clue. They really don't. Well, this guy, he had listened to them. He had believed what the news had said. He believed what he heard. He believed the AR, oh, that's such a powerful cartridge. No civilian should be able to own that. Well, then I showed him a picture of a 30-06 beside a 223 and explained to him that the 30-06 is what we've been deer hunting with for 100 years. And again, he kind of had an idea of hunting cartridges. Well, he just couldn't believe how much smaller and less powerful a 223 was compared to just a normal, everyday, standard hunting cartridge. He didn't know. And that's a lot of our problem now. There's so many just normal people that they just don't know. All right, so for you gun people, if you're ever in a conversation with somebody, keep that in mind. Don't just start screaming at them and, hey, you need to believe what I believe. No, just remember they don't know. And if you're having a conversation on firearms with somebody, don't get upset. Just remember they don't know, and if you can explain something to them in a way they understand it, you'll see that light bulb go off. And then when they realize, and we're talking facts here, 223 is not a powerful cartridge. All right. Well, if they know what a 22 is, and a great many people do, if you explain to them, hey, it shoots a 22 bullet. Or if they know what a 30-06 is, show them a picture of a 223 beside a 30-06 cartridge. You'll see the light bulb go off in their head when they realize how much bad information they've been given. And hey, if they realize how much bad information they've gotten just on the cartridge, maybe they'll start to question some of the other information they've been given over the years. Anyway, just something for you gun people to keep in mind, because our gun rights, they're seriously fixing to be under attack, at least here in the U.S., the way it's looking like the election's going to turn out with Harris as president. I know y'all don't want to hear that, but come on, it's the truth. And if you don't believe it, you need to listen to Biden's latest interview on CNN. His words, unedited. Anyway, not going there. It's about politics. It's about let people know. That's the bottom line. And once they realize the truth behind a lot of things, just the straight up facts, not opinion. That's once normal people start to realize, and they're starting to realize, okay, they're starting to realize that the same people that have been saying only the police should have guns, well, those are the same people saying, well, you don't need police. This past summer was a wake-up call for a lot of people. That's why you can't buy any bullets right now in the U.S. because all those people that, many of them, were against guns, well, they went and bought guns. They're buying bullets and they're learning how to shoot. So it's a chance for us to at least make sure a lot of people in the country know the truth. And then for those that still decide, okay, they know the truth, and then they say, okay, but I don't want a gun because of the potential for accidents. They're not going to accept that responsibility. That's fine. That's their decision. That's their choice. And if they want to not exercise their right to own firearms, that'd be just like somebody deciding they didn't want to drive. Because driving's the same thing. When you get into a motor vehicle, you could hurt yourself or someone else. There's a responsibility there every time you get behind the wheel and you drive on a public highway. Exact same thing. Well, we don't blame the people that choose not to drive. We accept that's their decision. Well, it's the same way for the people that choose not to have firearms. We accept that's their decisions. And I'm just someone, if they really don't feel like they need to have a firearm around, listen to them. Just like if someone really feels like they don't need to be behind the wheel of a car, listen to them. They don't need to be. But hopefully one day they'll understand that they're putting that responsibility on someone else when they don't. Which that's okay too, because a lot of people are willing to step up and accept that responsibility. But that's just an interesting way to look at it. I hope y'all enjoyed this, and if you did, please give the video a thumbs up. If you didn't give the video a thumbs up, it helps out the video and it lets YouTube know you enjoy shooting and hunting videos. God bless and have a good day.